I like to begin with a scripture. And so we'll begin by reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. This will be Matthew chapter 19. And Pharisees came up to Jesus and tested him by asking, "Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?" He answered, "Have you not read that He who made them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.' So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away?" He said to them, "For your hardness of heart Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for porneia and marries another commits adultery." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. This passage is so oftentimes untranslated or translated poorly or misquoted or unquoted in many circles. I chose to use the Greek word there for that exception that he gives. One of the things that we will delve into is that the concept that this passage brings to us. Jesus defends marriage from the beginning. He defends the way that God created it. God created marriage. Human beings didn't create it. The church didn't create it. We didn't set the rules. God set the rules when He created us. Now, God did set the rules for all humanity, but as you know, sin entered into the world, and humanity is not as it ought to be. There is brokenness, and we want to acknowledge that. I think this is what this whole process is about, is acknowledging that there is brokenness, imperfection. And that's what Jesus is saying when He says a man who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery. But He says unless that marriage is, and this is the better translation, unlawful. That's the better translation of the Greek word. Unless the marriage is not in accord with right understanding of marriage. So these are hard words of Jesus, and that's why we're here. We take them seriously. We take, as Catholics, the look at marriage and say, wow, this is an awesome mystery, the capacity of the human person to give and receive matrimonial consent. Right? To offer their life to another and to receive the offer of one's the spouse's life, and to be joined no longer as two, but now as one. And so we as Catholics and as Christians, following the words of Jesus and responding to this good news, we say, wow, this is an awesome mystery, and we're not gonna dare desecrate this holy ground that is marriage and matrimonial consent. Like Moses before the burning bush, we take our shoes off. This is holy ground. We tread softly. That's why we're here today also, to really respect and honor this gift of marriage. But at the same time, acknowledging that there's brokenness, there is sin, there is all sorts of unlawfulness and things that have happened that lead you to the place where you're asking the church to consider declaring your marriage null. First, we acknowledge the pain that this brings. Right? This is a difficult thing to rehash old memories, to delve up, to delve into the emotions and the perhaps feelings of anger or resentment or whatever that might bring up. Sometimes the annulment process can be seen as a help to heal some of those wounds, right? There could be a therapeutic value to righting wrongs or to at least finding closure one way or another to an issue. But I'll say this, that the declaration of nullity process is not therapeutic at its heart. It is more legal at its heart, because the process tries to discover the facts of marital consent. Was this a lawful marriage as God understands it? or was it not? Did it lack something? To see if the essential properties and elements of the marriage covenant are found or not. So it's more of a factual process, but we'd hope that there could be some therapeutic qualities to it. Okay. Before we begin too heavy into this, I have a little quiz for you. Now, the reason why I give this quiz to you, it was developed by the tribunal, and these are kind of some of the most often heard myths, misunderstandings about this process that we're going to be discussing, this process of declaration of nullity. First, it takes years to get an annulment. It may or it may not. There are different types of declaration of nullity, different types of cases. Some that can be resolved in a matter of a week, just getting the paperwork in, documentary cases. There are some that are a little bit more contentious, a formal case that may go on, and most formal cases are at least 1 year to process fully and entirely to give due justice to the situation, to the case. Sometimes it takes even longer than that. You have some control over the length of the process, but not total control. But it doesn't take years to get an annulment for everybody, right? It's not a hard and fast rule that it takes so many years to do it. The majority of the laws in the Catholic Church are about marriage. This is one that a lot of people think, oh boy, all the Church cares about is marriage. Well, I'll tell you this. This is the Code of Canon Law, right? The Code of Canon Law. And we have the beginning of the marriage sections back here, right? So 1055. And it only goes 110 canons to 1165. That's all the Code of Canon Law has on marriage. So that's what a lot of people think, that this is all we do. But this is oftentimes the thing that people encounter. This is how they understand. This is the only way they encounter canon law in the Church. But really, there's a lot of other things that the Church has had to rule on, put rules up for. So keeping that in mind, that the majority of the laws in the Catholic Church are not about marriage, but enough of them are for our sake. An annulment costs thousands of dollars. One thing we want to declare with great joy in the Diocese of Knoxville and Nashville, we offer this as a ministry. It's not, there's no fee, there's no charge for making a petition to the tribunal for your marriage to be declared null. Okay, so there's no charge. We see it as a ministry. Now there is a cost associated with it, but the cost is defrayed by the offertory, the collection of the good people of God, and passed on to the tribunal. There is a cost to it, but there's no immediate cost to those who make a petition. You cannot get an annulment if you've been married for many years and have several children. Again, that's a generalization that's just incorrect. Now, would your particular case be the exception to that? Well, it might be. But in general, it's not about the number of years. It's not about the number of children. It's about the facts. Did your consent rise to the level of what we understand marriage to be? Or was it defective? Was your marriage in some other way impeded from validity? The facts are the facts. Now, sometimes it may be more difficult to prove the facts in certain situations. That may be where some of those myths come from. A divorced Catholic is excommunicated from the Church. This is oftentimes a misunderstood notion. No, in fact, we want to tell the good news that no, divorce does not automatically excommunicate you. Absolutely not. Those who are separated from their original spouse are still valued and full members of the community of the Church, and may still receive Holy Communion in the normal order, going to confession and living a life in keeping with the moral law of the Church. The problem that a lot of times happens, and this is where the complication comes in, when those who are divorced and are not free to marry seek to marry again. They attempt a second marriage when they're not free to marry. And so they have some kind of civil binding of something that is not able to be recognized in the community of the Church. So divorced and remarried. And those are asked to refrain from Holy Communion out of respect for that irregular situation. but even then they're not excommunicated. Even then, they're still valued members of the church community, but they're asked to have a humble view of the situation and to say, okay, I'm in an irregular situation that we need to work on. And that's where the declaration of nullity comes in. If you know the right people, it's easy to get an annulment. Well, the law of the church, those 110 canons, and plus there's the canons on processes, deal with justice and making sure that there is fair trial and that the personnel of the tribunal are not unduly influenced towards your case. There are checks and balances and automatic appeals and things like that that are ensuring justice. So that's not a case. That's not the case. This is an important one. Number 7, an annulment makes your children illegitimate. This is the greatest of myths. Children born of a putative marriage, that is, what to all seemed like was understood as a marriage, those children are considered valid, legitimate, right? That's not taken away when a marriage is declared illegitimate. The other thing is, in church law, there is no more rules or laws about legitimacy of children. There's no rights or obligations that spring from or arise from your particular, how you came into the world, the status of your parents. So the law of the church no longer has any need for declaring one way or the other. Legitimacy is a civil effect of marriage, and the church's declaration of nullity does not change the civil effects of marriage, right? So if your child is considered a legitimate child by the state, a declaration of nullity would not change that. We have no effect on civil effects of marriage or divorce. Okay, so an annulment does not make your children illegitimate. Annulment is just Catholic divorce. In fact, it's not. Even though we grant declarations of nullity when the proofs are there, that just merely means that your marriage did not arise to the level of what we understand valid marriage to be, the standard that God set, right? Natural law. And so it doesn't mean that somehow we have dissolved your marriage. There are some dissolution cases, and we'll get into that. But most declarations of nullity are not dissolutions. They are just declarations that there was not what we understand marriage to be from the beginning. Everyone who asks for an annulment eventually gets one. That's false. There are negative decisions. You have to prove, oftentimes, your case, either through documents or through testimony and witnesses. Prove it so that a judge can render a decision. Sometimes that is not proven. And then last, an annulment wipes away your marriage. We can't wipe away history. We don't rewrite the history books. If there was a loving, at some point, marriage, or there was a relationship, at least, that had the trappings of marriage, we don't discount that. We don't say that it didn't happen. No, we can acknowledge that there was a relationship. That does not wipe away your marriage or your invalid marriage even.